time for that rabbit hole either.
All right. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started at 6 p.m. I appreciate everyone being here tonight. We'll excuse Commissioner Hill and Commissioner Wilden. And if you all will join me, I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everyone. We'll now open it up for public input. Time has been set aside for any person to express ideas, concerns, comments, questions, or issues that are not listed on the public hearing on the agenda this evening. We'll open the public hearing, or public input, excuse me. Hearing none, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public input at this time and move to item number 1 under public hearings. Amendments to Title 1904, Establishment of Land Use Codes and Official Map. The proposed change would amend permitted uses by adding churches as permitted in the office, warehouse, industrial, light industrial, and business park zones, citywide and city initiative.
Okay, commissioners, we'll jump right into this if I can get it to move forward. Okay. Try again. If it works for me, it doesn't look like it does. Not sure why. All right. So this is a proposed amendment that regards 3 different issues of zoning uses that we have kind of been looking at for the last little while. They all affect the same section of code, but there's different reasons for bringing these 3 categories together of uses in various zones. So I'll talk about them individually. First, it's churches. Recently, it was brought to the city's attention that there was interest in having a church in one of our zones that we didn't currently permit it in. And as it was looked at from a legal standpoint, it was determined that we can't really deny churches to be in any zone unless there's a real strong reason to show why we are not permitting that. As we looked at it, we determined that we could permit churches in all of our zones except for one, which is not really used in our city right now. I don't think we've identified public school bus lots on our only lot that we have it on, but it is a zone that could be used. But we did determine that that was impractical to allow churches a public school bus lot. Otherwise, this amendment would allow for churches in all zones. So we're adding, as shown there, office, warehouse, light industrial, and business parks. All other zones have already permitted it, but these 4 did not. And so we're recommending that we add churches as permitted use in those zones. Next, we have ancillary commercial uses that are being recommended to be added into the institutional and civic zone. We have another motion coming forward to you at our next meeting that will rezone or ask to rezone several of our city-owned facilities and properties to institutional civic. They currently have various different types of zoning on them, but as we've looked at the marinas, at some of the parks, there is a concern that we may want to have additional possibilities and flexibility within the institutional civic zone that will benefit public use of those facilities or parks or marinas. So ancillary, of course, means complementary to but subsidiary to the main uses. So what we've done, and I'll show in just a minute, the recommended ancillary uses that could be permitted with marinas and parks. And then funeral homes, we just wanted to do some consistency here. There was interest in having a funeral home in the same zone where crematories are currently permitted, which is only one zone right now, industrial. We did have funeral homes permitted in other zones, but not in industrial. Just made sense to have that line up. So let's see, go ahead and move that forward for me, Sarah. How do you? All right. Technologically dysfunctional here. All right, so churches, that was just an easy thing. We'll just add those in. When we talk about the institutional and civic zone, we also looked at the section where it gives the purpose of the zone. So we wanted to make sure that we were lining that up as well. So we are recommending an additional statement at the end here that where it says at the bottom, other land uses that provide essential services to the general public, as well as some limited and ancillary commercial uses to benefit the public use of certain facilities. What we have in mind with that is when the marinas are fully developed, we may want to allow commercial rental of recreational equipment. We may want to even allow sales of those kinds of equipment. As they build up into nice parks, we may want to allow limited commercial opportunities for some retail, a small restaurant, or those type of things that make it a nice public gathering spot. So that's why we're recommending that. So added as ancillary or suggested to be added would be these commercial uses: bakery, retail, commercial recreation, convenience store / fast food combination, floral sales, ice cream shop, recreational rentals, restaurant takeout, restaurant, retail sales, and retail specialty. So again, these are ancillary. They will have to be shown as subsidiary to the main use of that facility or that property. So we're talking smaller uses, and that will be a determination that we'll have to make to show that these are definitely ancillary and not the main use of that property. And also, while we're looking at the chart, we notice there's a couple of permitted uses that are not currently shown as permitted in the IC zone, which would be marinas and recreation centers. So we'll definitely want to add those. So the chart does show those as proposed additions to the permitted uses. Then funeral homes, this just shows how crematory is only permitted currently in the industrial zone, and it was not permitted, funeral homes was not permitted there, so we're adding that. So with that, we recommend that these uses be amended as shown. Any questions?
Thank you again. Thanks for the presentation this evening. This is a matter of public hearing, so we'll open it up for public comment. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and turn it over to members of the commission for any questions or comments. Commissioner Kilgore.
Just a comment. The SOB, the sexually oriented businesses, they're permitted in the industrial. So with this change, does that mean that there's, or is there any standard or requirement to separate? Otherwise, a church could be right next to a sexually oriented business in the industrial zone?
I suppose that is a possibility. If a church wanted to do that and risk the chance that that might happen. But we need to have some place where sexually oriented businesses are permitted, and that is the zone where we have chosen that. I think most churches would prefer not to be in that type of a zone, but just the legal stance that we can't really prohibit them unless there's some strong reason we shouldn't allow that. So I suppose that's going to be their chance or risk.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's it for me.
Can I add to that? Even if they're in the same zone, they need to be 1,000 feet from a church, park, or school or residential zone.
So there is a restriction or a standard there. Okay, thank you.
Since requirement, yeah.
Thanks, Commissioner Kilgore. Any other questions or comments? All right, I think that's a good comment that you raised as well, and I would envision maybe the church wouldn't select that, but if the church was there first and then on top
Yes.
of that would be to protect them as well. All right, any other questions or comments from members of the commission? Otherwise, I would be happy to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. Based upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move to forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for the proposed amendments to Title 19 with the findings and conditions in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Spasi Burns. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Megan. We have a second. Do we have any additional discussion on the matter? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, we will move to business item number 1 on this evening's agenda. This is the Saratoga's Common Lot 1 site plan located at 737 North Saratoga Road. McKenna Christensen as the applicant.
Commission, this is a site plan that you make a recommendation to the City Council. It's located on the southwest corner of Pioneer Crossing and Saratoga Road. And the applicant, McKenna Christensen, is here with us. Here's the basic site plan showing the parking. It meets the parking requirements. It meets the landscape requirements, actually exceeds the landscape requirements as part of the Gateway Overlay Zone. And it meets the Gateway Overlay Zone primarily because it has more landscaping than the code requires. The Gateway Overlay Zone also requires enhanced landscaping next to major streets like Pioneer Crossing and Saratoga Road. And the next few slides show the enhanced landscaping. This is off of Pioneer Crossing, showing the north elevation. And this is off of Saratoga Road, showing the east elevation. The elevations also meet the code. And in the Gateway Overlay Zone, it requires like 50% of the elevation that's facing a major street to be with windows, and it meets that code on the north elevation and on the east elevation. And then here's some possible motions that you could consider. And I'd be glad to address any questions you might have.
Thanks for the presentation. Would the applicant like to add anything to the presentation this evening? We're all looking at you because we're guessing it's you. We're just, powers of deduction. All right.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about some of the.
That'd be great. Yeah, please. If you don't mind stating your name and address for the record, that would be good. Thank you.
Yeah, it's McKenna Christensen. Address is 610 North, 800 West in Centerville. So the only tenant that we currently are negotiating with here is Starbucks. They would be interested in taking the drive-through space on the west end, as well as the patio space that goes with that. We are also planning an additional patio on the east end for another tenant. We've had some good interest from other tenants, but haven't engaged with anyone yet. Starbucks will take around 2,400 square feet, so we'll have two 2,400 square foot spaces left for additional retail tenants. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Thanks. Thanks for the additional insight, and thank you for being here tonight. We'll now turn it over to members of the commission for any questions or comments. Commissioner Kilgore.
Since this is a administrative process, I always like to ask the applicant, are you willing to comply with all the conditions in the city staff packet?
Yes.
Okay. And again, because it is administrative, we had some can't complies, and I just wanted to make sure that there's not a problem with any of them. There was one for the completion of landscape improvements. That was a can't comply. Any anticipated issues with?
No, on the landscape improvements along Pioneer Crossing. No, we don't anticipate a problem there. So this is in the same subdivision as the Tag and Go car wash, and they actually are install quite a bit of those improvements. We have a cost sharing agreement worked out.
Okay.
So those, we shouldn't have a problem installing those.
Great, thank you for that. And then the grading and drainage and the secondary water system and dedication of water shares, it was a can comply as well. Any anticipated issues with that?
No, so as far as our storm drainage, we have a couple other lots in this subdivision, and with this first phase, we'll be sizing the drainage for the entire site and installing that with this phase. We're gonna do an underground storm tech system. And then, what was the other question?
Secondary water dedication of water shares.
Oh, yeah, no concerns there. So we actually did have some water shares left over from previous use at the property. That accounts for some of the water shares we will need, and we don't have any concerns getting the remaining shares that we'll need to service this property.
Okay, thank you.
Dedicating those.
All right. And then development of bond agreement. That was also a can comply. Do you anticipate any issues with that bond agreement?
No.
Okay. And then I was wondering, you know, in I guess it's the drive-through part, can a snow removal truck get through that drive-through? Is it wide enough?
I don't know off the top of my head. So we've done a few other Starbucks developments with them specifically. And we have a mix of some trucks go through it sometimes, and sometimes we have smaller ATV vehicles that will service the drive-through and make sure that that's plowed. And we do put, most of this drive-through, we're actually, we have concrete on a portion of it, which will help with snow removal, just so that asphalt's not getting ripped up through snow removal.
Okay, I was wondering, you know, I mean, because, you know, with the snow, no, with the Starbucks drive-throughs, how they do remove the snow, I wonder if they just manually snow shovel it, or if they do have a truck go through.
Yeah, it depends on the stacking too. Sometimes what our property managers will do, if it's a smaller drive-through stack, then just hand remove them can be easier, but we've got a pretty deep car stack here, so it'll probably be an ATV or some other machine like that. But we usually contract out our snow removal to snow removal companies that have all the equipment to service that.
Okay, and so what you're going to build there is going to be similar to other areas, and you haven't had problems in other areas with that issue? Okay, so that sounds good. And then I want to ask staff, there is on page, well, you know, I use the big packet, so I don't have the, of course, and because it's a graphic, it freezes my iPad. There is a red line around storefront anodized dark bronze, and also around the trash enclosures. I'm just wondering what the red line was for.
It's on page 33 of the separate packet for reference.
If I recall that red line, we hadn't called out those materials in one of our previous submissions, so I remember that was a red line. We went back and forth and just needed to submit the actual materials we were using there, but
Was that around the windows? You say bronze?
It said, yeah. Yes, yeah, it's got, it's a page that's got a bunch of color, or like color blocks, and then on one of the color blocks, it has a red line around it, but no explanation as to what the.
Oh, okay, there's probably the windows. We specified later, clarified that the material for the windows would comply with the code.
Okay, and they will be? Okay, terrific. And then the trash enclosures, it also has a,
I think that red line, we hadn't called out the material, and we added a note that the material on the trash enclosure will match the elevations of the building.
okay.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
it.
So no real issue, actually. Okay, it's just minor. That's it for me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Kilgore. Appreciate your questions and comments. Any other questions or comments from members of the commission? Otherwise, I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation to the City Council to approve the requested site plan for Saratoga Commons, Lot 1, located at 737 North Saratoga Road, with the finding and conditions in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Spasi Burns. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any additional discussion on the matter? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That passes unanimously. Thank you for being here this evening as well. Thanks for the presentation. Okay, we'll go ahead and move to item number 2 under the business items this evening. That's approval of the minutes from May 16, 2024. Now is the time to edit those minutes if you have caught anything, and if not, be happy to entertain a motion to approve. I got you.
Sorry. I move that we approve the minutes for the May 16, 2024 Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Sparks Burns. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any additional discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
I wasn't there, do I?
That's okay, yeah. All right. We are now on to reports, and we have an opportunity here as commissioners' comments. Do we have any comments from the commission? I have one quick question. So I've noticed we have a boatload of dead trees. Like in our developments, like when we require like what we just did, we're planting a bunch of trees that don't grow here. And they're all just dead. Like if you drive down Redwood Road South to where we've built all these houses, like they've either had to go through and replace, or there's just, we're not accomplishing what I think we want to accomplish with that. And I don't know, we probably don't have the right tools on the follow-up side of things versus can we help control or guide or bring on an arborist to say this is what we require? And I think we had some discussions around some of this when we were talking landscaping a few meetings ago. But to me, it feels like we're just kind of, it's self-defeating in a regard because the developers are obviously going to want to do whatever is cheapest and throw whatever they can in there. But we're throwing in a bunch of species of trees that just won't grow. So I don't know, Sarah, if you have thoughts, or I don't want to overstep obviously what we can and can't do, but if we could somehow, like I noticed even on the application tonight, like some of those trees, like these big maples and things that that would look great anywhere else are just going to be sticks in a year here in Saratoga Springs.
It's really good feedback. In the process, we do require that the applicant use a licensed landscape architect. So we're really leaving it up to them to propose a good plan and for their landscape architect to look into that and propose the right trees. We, as planners, don't have that background, which is why we require in our submittal that a licensed architect does it. Obviously, there's still an issue since we're experiencing so many trees in that situation. Let me look into it a little bit more and come back with a suggestion on that. As far as staff and our planning staff, we don't have that training. So we would have to have somebody else propose a list for us. We could probably discuss that with our Parks Department, but I would need to run that up the chain to make sure that administration is fine with us doing that.
Yeah, and I don't mean to make work for anyone, right? But what I would like to see, if you go to any of the local nurseries, there's enough people on staff now that will say, plant this, don't plant that. I think it wouldn't be too hard for us to either do a training or bring in a consultant for the city to say, this is what you should be, these are the only ones that you should be listing. And I don't mean for us to plant the same tree everywhere. There's enough variety, but it would be a lot better than just looking at a bunch of dead sticks, like on our parks and trails. Like I'm on that Redwood Trail a lot south of town, and you're just running by countless dead trees. So just a thought. Commissioner Mangum, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I had a quote unquote a professional landscaper tell me the trees that will survive and do well, and one of them died even though he told me it would do well, and another one looked sick and dead for years, and then all of a sudden now it's just gorgeous. And so I listened to professionals, and yeah, it's a tough, some trees are supposed to do well in Saratoga Springs, and they just don't. It's a tough subject.
It is, and I appreciate your insight into it as well. And it obviously doesn't guarantee 100% success for us as a city, but I think if we control things and mitigate what we can,
Yeah.
Getting into the right varieties of the trees that at least stand a chance with our climate, our soils, and our water, then I think we're doing ourselves.
Some have no chance.
Yeah, we're doing ourselves a service to the citizens instead of just planting trees that'll be dead next year. Fair?
Appreciate that
All right.
comment, yeah.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments from members of the commission? All right, we'll move to director's report.
Okay. The last council meeting, they approved Wildflower Village Plan 8, which you had seen previously, and then the retaining wall code amendment. We had only had it in our hillside ordinance, and now that applies citywide, regardless of whether you're in a hillside or area. And then we had a work session with the city council on our sign code. We're finalizing some changes, and you'll be seeing that soon. And then our next meeting on June 13th, it looks like 3 of you will be out, as long as Commissioner Wilden will be here. We will have a quorum, so we will need 4 people. And we have a very full agenda. We have 7 items, which is probably your biggest agenda this year. So you can look forward to that.
Chose my vacation wisely. All right, thank you for the report. Do we have any need to enter into a closed session this evening?
We do not.
Okay, seeing that we don't have a need to enter into closed session, we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting and then enter into our Open and Public Meetings Act training for the evening. Thank you.
And for that, we are going to go to the conference room.
Oh, nice.
So